music is now. Hi, I'm Gary Quinn, and welcome to Ready, Set, Live. My guest today is David Courtney. He is a singer, songwriter, Grammy nominated, and he has sold over 33 million records. He discovered Leo Sayer. He's worked with Roger Daltrey, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page, and he's got a new book called Oh, What a Life. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, Gary.
It's so great to see you. We go way
And
back, and
yeah,
I'm just so pleased that we're still here and doing what we love doing.
absolutely. Yeah, it's been a long, long time. Been
E-
a long journey, Gary.
Exactly. David, I know I read your book, and I know at 9 years old, you had a life, let's say, experience of almost you were locked in the refrigerator.
Yeah, I was one of those kids that always got up to a bit of mischief.
Uh-huh.
My parents never knew what I was going to do next, and I was always inventing things, and I guess that's carried on throughout my life. But when I was about 8 to 9 years of age, I was fortunate enough to be taken uh, overseas because a lot of people never used to travel overseas in those days. So my father had done pretty well in business by that point, and we went over to Belgium from England, and we stayed in a hotel in Ostend in Belgium. And my parents were upstairs in a lounge area with some other people having a drink and socializing. And I decided that I was going to go and play with a load of kids from the hotel and into this abandoned basement area of a hotel. And we were playing hide and seek. And typically of me, I would always try and find a place where I wouldn't be found,
Uh-huh.
which is a great idea in one way, but wasn't in another. And I discovered this refrigerator behind a counter in the bar area, deserted bar area of this basement. And I thought, well, this looks good. So I opened the door, and it had no shelves in it. And I thought, well, I can get in there. So I squeezed myself in, my knees up against my chin, and then suddenly the door locked behind closed behind
Oh
me. and
my.
and and for those that want to know, always doubt, as it was always a thing when I was a kid, you used to be told, does the light go out when the door closes? And I can assure you it does.
Oh
And
no.
I yeah, and I was inside this refrigerator. I remember this very, very clearly. And then I started to panic, as you can imagine, and pushing and shoving, and the door wouldn't open. And by pure chance, or however you might want to describe it, my father, he had the feeling that, oh, I'll go and check with see where David is because he's always up to something. And he had this sort of feeling that, maybe things weren't quite right. And he walked all the way down to this basement area and right up around to this counter, behind this counter, and opened the refrigerator door and pulled me out.
Wow.
How that happened, Gary, I don't know. All I can say is if he hadn't have done it, I wouldn't be here today talking to you. But it was quite extraordinary that he had the insight and the feeling to be drawn to this refrigerator. And well, of course, I got the telling off of telling offs when he dragged me out.
Right.
But yeah, it always stayed with me. And I thought, well, what a perfect opening to this book, because it sort of sums up how my life has gone on from there
Correct.
on in.
It's almost as if you had nine lives.
Yeah, I yes, I think that's
And
true.
as you were progressing, I know when you were 16, you joined you created your first band, and that was you were the drummer, which I didn't know you were the drummer.
Yeah. I was a drummer, Gary. Yes, it actually started when I was 14 at school with a mate. We formed a band, like a lot of the boys did in those days. Formed their bands at school, and you progressed up. You know, you got better and better. I decided that drumming was for me. I felt that I had a natural rhythm. My best friend, who's still my best friend today, a guy called Peter Hall, he decided that he was going to play guitar, and he had the ability to build his own electric guitar in the woodwork shop at school, and converted an old record deck to an amplifier, and we were off and running. I managed to blag my father into buying me an what they call an undersized drum kit, and which was magnificent to me at the time. And so we formed the band, got another two people in, and then it developed on. And so by the time I was 16, I became professional, and the band had obviously developed a lot more, and members came and left, and joined and left, and including my old buddy Pete, and at that age I found myself, as I say, professional and playing in clubs in London. I don't know how I would have been allowed to have been there, but today I would never be allowed. But one club in particular was called the Bag of Nails, and that was the club in London. It was in a street in London which is parallel to the famous Carnaby Street. And this was in that magical 60s period of sort of 1966, 67.
Yeah, and everybody played there, right?
Well, it was where they discovered Jimi Hendrix.
Correct.
It was the music elite were the audience every night. So there I am as a 16-year-old kid in this band, and the audience was made up of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Walker Brothers, the Kinks, the Small Faces. I mean, it was extraordinary. And I'm there playing in this band, and you become, I don't know, you sort of, you don't really, it doesn't really register with it, you know, with you. At the time, you're just getting on with doing it. I never felt the confidence to go and approach any of these people, especially the likes of Paul McCartney. And that's where he met Linda, by the way, that in that same club. But I would see them in there every night. We were the resident band.
Wow.
And so I never used to get to see daylight. You know, we used to leave there at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and get home back down to Brighton, down on the coast of England, and back in the truck again at 6 o'clock in the evening to go and repeat it all again. So it was an extraordinary, very unhealthy life for a young 16-year-old boy, but fantastic grounding. I mean, really.
And then, David, you went on a, let's see, promotional tour. I don't know if this was, you know, the Gunnell agency that promoted you, but you were on a tour with a little group called the Bee Gees.
Yeah, we got a record deal with Polygram at the time, and we were sent out to promote our single, and they'd signed the Bee Gees at the same time. And so we were both doing these tours together, you know, going around these places, this circuit, to promote our singles. And I remember very clearly standing backstage one night of this particular club, and I'm eyeballing Robin Gibb at the other side of the stage, and we both had those identical little square glasses, like the guy from the Byrds used to wear, and John Lennon had them. They were little, square sunglasses, and we looked at each other, and of course you couldn't see the eyes, but there was this sort of stare that went on, as it's almost like two women that are wearing the same dress at the same party. You know, it had that same sort of feeling, and it was quite weird. Anyway, it was a wonderful experience. And
and as a young boy, I mean, you were probably 16, 17, 18. You must have felt, I mean, was there not an urgency, but you had a feeling that was your passion of music? You must have started to feel like I belong. I'm seeing all these people around me. Was there a sense of I'm here. I've made it in some way.
Absolutely, it was. Yeah, passion being the operative word here. I had that from a very early age when I used to sit listening to the radio, and in those very early days, listening to people like Danny Kaye, and a wonderful series that that was happening at the time called Sparky and His Magic Piano. I'll always remember it. It played it had such an impression on me. It was created and produced by an American guy called Alan Livingston for Capitol Records, and I was absolutely ensconced with this thing. I mean, it was so special to me. So I would listen to music and these sort of things all the time. And by the time then early television came about and those very early rock and roll shows came on TV, I knew that this was where I belonged. The passion, the draw for me, I was there. And little did I realize or know at the time that a lot of the people that I was watching then as a kid, I would land up working with when I was older.
That's what I found so revealing because, as we progress in life, sometimes we connect with someone who we have admired or have seen, and then the next thing you know, you're sitting with them, either working with them or connected to them in some way. It's really quite a feat to be able to manifest in that way. But I think the paths are always guided. And I think if you follow your passion, that will always drive you with divine synchronicity to be at the right place at the right time with the right people.
Absolutely. And that certainly comes in regard to writing songs. That I've always felt that when I didn't write songs in those particular years because it's difficult to write a song on a drum kit. But later on, I managed to self-taught myself to play the piano and learning chords, and then it all just sort of came. It was there waiting to be born, and when you are creating a song, writing a song. Sometimes, and there are those certain songs that when it's almost like your hands are placed on the keyboard, and the words that come out of your mouth, and you don't stop and think about it at the time. It just sort of comes. But when you look back on it, you think, wow, how did that happen? It was like it's surrealistic. How did this happen? But when that happens, they are the ones that are going to make it. And it happened to me every time. And McCartney has said the same thing. And Barry Gibb has said the same thing. It's almost as some sort of divine intervention or guide that helps you and places things. And it happens almost effortlessly. And it is still happening to this day.
It's almost, David,
right now, and it's happening again.
It's almost, David, you tune in to another frequency and download this information. And I think when you're open as a creative, you're able to access this. I think everybody can access it, but you've been fine-tuned. And I had an experience when I lived in Paris. I downloaded this song, and the melody was so strong. And to this day, it's still in my file. I have to send it to you because I think there's something to it. Right. The melody, I've never heard it before, but it's something that just downloads in my mind still to this day. And that was in the late 80s that I accessed this. So I'm sure songs that you've written have come to you in either a form of a dream or a feeling or something triggered it. It was like a trigger. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely, Gary. As I say, it's when you find the words, and I was never the lyricist really. When I was with Leo Sayer, he was always the one writing the lyrics, and I would write the music. Sometimes I'd have a one line like the song called "Giving It All Away" that Roger Daltrey recorded. I had the opening line, paid all my dues, picked up my shoes, and got up and walked away. And then Leo then took it from there. Where that came from, I don't know. But you know what? You don't sit and question these things. You go with it, and you think, I'm being blessed here. I mean, I've been blessed. Period. I had wonderful parents. I've been given a talent, and what a great way to earn a living. To have been involved with this industry over all these years, and to be able to create and write music is like, wow.
I mean, yeah, it's the title of your book. Oh, what a life! And you've had such a life. Was it Leo Sayer that you connected first, or was it Roger Daltrey that was first?
No, it was Leo. I held auditions. I did what Simon Cowell does
Uh-huh.
these days with his Britain You've Got Talent, or America You've Got Talent. I held auditions. I put an ad in the local paper
Uh-huh.
looking for talent. I'd finished with the band at that point and decided I wanted to move over to the other part of the industry and look for talent. And I did that. I put an advertisement in this newspaper and held this audition in Brighton, which is my hometown in south of England. And he turned up with a little band called Patches, they were called at the time. And they were like act number 49. And by then I'd had a migraine with these people coming on and doing all these stupid things. Anyway, when I heard the voice, I knew it. It was like, oh, where did that come from? And I'm looking around this band on the stage and I couldn't see where this voice was coming from. And suddenly this little demeaned figure walks across the stage, almost like a Shakespearean actor with his mop of hair and this voice. And I thought, wow. He was called Jerry by then, but it was his real name, Gerard. And I knew I'd found something special. So I then signed them up and I took them for an audition in London to George Martin's record label called Air Records, George as in the Beatles, and to have an audition with them to see if I could get a record deal. And as soon as they heard it, they gave me a contract. But I didn't know my way around contracts. So I went to my former employer, then landed up to be my best friend, a guy called Adam Faith, the actor Adam Faith, and asked his advice. And when he heard what we had started to write together and heard this voice, he said, rip the contract up. We're going to find the money and we're going to make the album and we're going to produce and manage this guy. And that was the beginning of the journey. So it was Leo that started it off. And then through that, we got to meet through another party, Roger Daltrey. When we were recording that first Leo Sayer album, we used Roger's built a studio in his house, the barn area of his house, and we recorded the second part of the album there. And when he heard what we were doing, he then asked Leo and I to write his debut solo album for him and for Adam and I to produce it. So, I mean, this, as I say, again, it was all like, when things slot in and they have a momentum and it's almost out of your control, but it's happening. And of course, you are contributing because you're bringing your talent to it and your work to it. But it almost feels like there's something going on that's helping to ease things through here and push you on your way. And then meeting Roger was a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, and I remember in the book there was a picture of you and Leo, and I believe it was in Roger's studio. Was that his own studio?
That's right.
It was a black and white, correct. We're flashing
there
it
we
now.
go. Yeah, that was us when we were doing that album, when we
Wow.
were recording there. And it was amazing because when we were doing that, like Pete Townsend would drop in and he was listening to what we were doing. And we had one track, which has always been a very, very important song to me, a song called Why Is Everybody Going Home? And when Pete heard it, he was like totally taken back. He was like really taken back with this. And Speedy Keen, who was Pete's protege, he was the guy that did the famous song. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It'll come back to me in a minute. People like him and Jimi Hendrix drummer Mitch Mitchell and all the and these guys would all drop in the studio. So it was quite magical what was going on around us. Oh, Something in the Air. That was the song.
Oh, right.
How could I forget that?
Right. It was so funny, David. I had an experience in Japan probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was en route to Tokyo, and then I had a layover because I was working in Osaka first. So I was jet lagged out of my mind. I arrive in Tokyo, Narita Airport, and I'm getting on a plane an hour later going to Osaka, and I'm sitting on an empty flight, a Japanese airline, and I look over to my right, and there's a man who looks like you. and I go, where do I know this man? And then I kept, I was jet lagged, so I hadn't slept, and it was Pete. It was the Who. It was Roger and Pete. And I'm like going, oh my God, what are they doing here? And I was just coming from England the week before. And when we landed in Osaka, they were at the luggage, and I saw them. I was standing like, the plane was empty. And I went up to the tour manager and I said, I'm Gary. I said, I worked with Richard Cole, and I mentioned your name, David Courtney, and he goes, oh, we're here doing a tour. And so I saw them. I mean, they were literally standing a few feet, but that was my experience with them. And it was just, it's always synchronicity, and then now we're talking about that situation.
I know, isn't it? Yeah, fantastic. You just showed the photograph of myself, Roger, and Jimmy Page, and that's the Richard Cole connection, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So as you started to evolve, you wrote songs with everybody. I mean, in the book, it lists all the songs and all the groups you've worked with. I mean, it's pretty impressive, David. I mean, it's for a young songwriter or a young artist. I mean, what is that secret? Is it just trust your path?
As I say, Gary, it's sometimes you think, how did this happen? How did I meet this one? How did I meet that one? You do, you encounter people along the way, but and people then, let's not, without putting myself down here, that there are people that wanted to work with me, so it was like they chose to approach me as well. So that helped. But, when I was producing people like Roger, for example, I remember we were doing what was Roger's third solo album called One of the Boys. And it was star-studded, that album. I mean, from Mickey Ronson, who I became great friends with, who was with David Bowie all those years. McCartney, I was working with for the second time, and he actually wrote a song for us for that album. I got Barry Gibb to write a song for that album, but Roger wouldn't record it in the end, which is another whole story in the book. But there was Alvin Lee from 10 Years After. There was Rod Argent from the band Argent. Hank Marvin from the Shadows. I mean, the lineup was quite extraordinary. And funny enough, what was also extraordinary about that album was that when it was released, they released the single "One of the Boys," which was written by a guy called Steve Gibbons, and it was sort of quite a rocky song. And they created a video, they produced a video for it, and they promoted the video. In those days, it was the first video to go out in the cinemas as what was called the B movie, prior to the main feature, and on the circuit, and that main feature happened to be Star Wars.
Wow.
So it was an extraordinary thing that they put this video out there from this album. It was the first time it had ever been done. So that was quite a feat. That was nothing to do with me. That was the record company that did that. But yeah, these things all happen, and you think, wow, how did that happen? And how did that happen? But as I say, you don't question it. You just roll with it, go with it. You roll with it. And,
correct. And I know you also collaborated with Marina Capuro on this project. How did that come about? It was a music project.
Yeah, well, that was interesting. Many years later, back again in my hometown of Brighton, there was Abba had. Their career had started out basically in Brighton, because that's when they won the Eurovision Song Contest, which was the first time and only time it ever been held in Brighton. And they were there, and I remember Leo and I were there that night. I remember looking at these guys in the hotel lobby with their really gaudy 70s coloured outfits on. And I said to Leo, I said, "Who's this lot?" And he said, "Oh, that's the Swedish entry." And I went, "Oh, right, okay, that figures." Anyway, taking notes of it, Leo had his hit by then, and we went to the concert and we were watching them. And as soon as I heard it was the song called Waterloo. And as soon as I heard it, I said, oh, that's it. That's the one that's going to win it. Olivia Newton-John was our entry. And I thought, no, it's a shame. She's not going to make it. This is going to be the one. And sure enough, it was. Anyway, 30 years onwards, I decided that, oh, wouldn't it be great to celebrate the 30 years of ABBA and hold this thing called Abba Fest? And I organized this festival over a weekend called Abba Fest. And we had all sorts of artists appearing and concerts and things, even the Brighton Philharmonic Orchestra and all sorts of stuff going on. And Marina Kapura, she was renowned in Russia for doing her covers of the ABBA songs. And so she came over from Russia to do this appearance and perform. And that's when I first met her. And I never really saw her again for, I don't know, quite a number of years. But when I was putting together a collection of songs, I thought, oh, I'd love to find a female vocalist to do these songs, to perform these songs. And she came into my mind. Again, Gary, I don't know why. And I don't question it. It just so happened. She appeared and I tracked her down and I presented with her and her husband, Yuri, the idea of recording these songs. And they were over the moon, you know, with the idea of doing it. And so they recorded all these songs in St. Petersburg, Russia, where she's based. And we were flying stuff over the air, you know, online, you know, with different mixes and things. And the album came out and it was called Matinee. Mm-hmm. And what happened was they really took it in Russia. They took onto it. And the next thing I know, I was approached by this organization in St. Petersburg, which is the big arts sort of their Oscars, I guess. And it turned out that I was the first British composer to do anything like this, to collaborate with a Russian artist. And they gave me an award. And I got this. I was the first and only British composer to ever receive this award. I was completely stunned that I was being given this. You know, it was really peculiar. And we stayed great friends ever since. And yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration. Something really special.
And did that spur on the Walk of Fame that you have in Brighton, which is almost like the Walk of Hollywood Stars here in Los Angeles?
Yes, there you go. When I was living in LA, when we knew each other originally, and I was there for 7 years, I think 6, 7 years. And I was recording the likes, you know, with Leo and other artists, and using a very famous studio in LA called Sunset Sound. I'm assuming it's still there. I'd hope so. It was an iconic studio. And every day I would be walking through Hollywood there, and I'd go through the Hollywood Boulevard. And I was always very impressed with it. And, you know, America is fantastic at promoting its people and, you know, and pushing everything forward, and they see no boundary, they see no walls. In our country, you do have to fight your way through it a bit more. You know, people are not quite as you know, they don't have quite that sort of vision, I think, sometimes, and or certainly not bold enough to go with it, whereas in America they are. And I always thought, well, why don't we do something like this in England? And when I do return home, I'm going to see if I can introduce this concept. And sure enough, when I got home, I thought, right, okay, and this is nothing really to do with music, but I really have a passion to want to do this. So I put it together and managed to trademark it. And Hollywood immediately came to me and said, you can't do this because we've got the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I said, yeah, you do in Hollywood. You don't have it in the UK. And I've got the trademark. And so they said, oh, well, fair enough, as long as you don't emulate our star symbol. And I said, no, it wouldn't be done like that. I said, okay. So I went ahead and I introduced it into the UK, and it started then, which would be nearly 25 years, I think, next year. And yeah, and I decided to start it off in my hometown of Brighton, because it's always been renowned for its association with the rich and famous. It's a sort of Hollywood of England. And, you know, with the likes of Laurence Olivier and famous sports people and music bands and all, you know, Norman Cook, Fatboy Slim, and all these various artists. I thought this is the place to do the first one, and that's what I did, and we launched it, and it was a fantastic success. And over the years, it has become a second business to me. And we've since introduced the world's first football walk of fame, and there's a big music walk of fame in Camden in London now. And funny enough, the Who were the first to be inducted into that, and Amy Winehouse and these people.
Is it just music, David, or is it?
No, it, as I say, Brighton deals with all the people that are closely associated with the city of Brighton and Hove, from entertainment through sport,
excellent.
all over. The football one is just for the footballers, with people like Ronaldo and Messi and all those on it. But the other one that's coming next year, Gary, you'd be interested to learn, is we're going to be doing the world's first Bollywood Walk of Fame. And
wonderful.
And that's going to be something really special.
You know, one of my ex-clients, I'm surprised you haven't done her. It's Sarah Douglas, who lives in Brighton, the actress.
Sarah Douglas. Remind me of Sarah Douglas.
She was in Superman. I used to manage her years ago.
Really?
And she was in Superman. She was in Falcon Crest as a regular. She did all the kind of horror movies also, but she's mostly known for the Superman part. She was the evil princess or something.
Well, you know, Gary, when I started it was like I had to do a whole load of research on my own city and find out who was there, who was associated with. And I tell you, it was such an education. Look, I was very fortunate enough, although he unfortunately passed on, but I was very fortunate enough to get to know Laurence Olivier, and I spent a bit of time with him. And he was very, very, close with Brighton, because that's where he lived for many years with his wife, Joan Plowright, and actors of that caliber, and all these people. And what was wonderful, when we launched it, we had people from across the whole spectrum, from, as I say, sports, theatre, television, innovation, and bringing them, even authors, and bringing them under one roof for a big celebration and a big event, like a sort of Hollywood Oscar event, bringing them all together. They would never normally meet, and it was wonderful just to sit back and watch these people interact, and they would never normally get to meet each other, and it was a fantastic experience just to witness that, you know, and be responsible for it. So yeah, I've got a really big buzz out of that, and
that is brilliant.
And it continues on.
Yeah, that's so brilliant, David. You know, we also have another mutual friend from Parliament, Brian Oxley.
Oh, really? Oh,
I know Brian for years. I've coached him.
Oh, wonderful. He's a lovely man. We haven't seen each other for a long time because he sort of dropped out of the politics thing quite a while.
Correct.
And I don't know where he went.
He's still in London. I believe he's not in Brighton. He's about 45 minutes away. Every time I go to London, I have a meal with him, or he comes to actually Los Angeles quite often.
Oh, right. Oh, well, please give him my best.
I will.
To get in touch. Absolutely.
So
I'm now wandering into your area, Gary, of what you do. I've joined forces with a lady called Mimi Novick, and she's does inspirational. She's got a lot of books out there, and meditation and all this. And again, it's one of those things. It's like I wasn't really looking for this, and she approached me when my album, this Isolation Symphony album, came out, to do a podcast, and I said to her, you know, I'd love to do something where it brings all of what you do and musically for what I do, which is very sort of in the realms of Pink Floyd and all that sort of thing. I said, and marry the two together, and we've done it. And over the course of, I don't know, less than 3 months from that meeting, we've done a whole album, and it's now just been released. It's called Dreamhouse, and it's almost like someone else is intervening and pushing you and doing this. It's quite extraordinary. But
it's brilliant, David. So, David, what who would you love to work with still in the future that you haven't, let's say, worked with yet?
Oh, who would I like to work with? Oh, wow. Unfortunately, some of them have gone now. I mean, I did get to know David Bowie, and he would have been one of them, but he's now gone. We lost so many in that particular period, didn't we? And Prince, such a high regard for Prince. What a talent. So he's another one that I would have loved to work with. Um, I guess you'd have to say someone like Springsteen would be very
Mm.
high on the pecking order. Because of I mean, he's an extraordinary talent himself. Yeah, I guess Bruce would be right up there. Yeah, people like Dave Grohl and all that. I mean, I got to work with a lot of the great musicians in LA when I was living there. People like Steve Cropper and Steve Lukather and Jeff Beccaro and all those guys. Yeah, I had the privilege of working with all those sort of people. So um, yeah, yes, I guess Bruce would be one of them. Yeah, it would be very high up on my list.
Wow. David, when we all go through this life with our purpose and our passion, and when we leave this experience, how do you want to be remembered when they say David Courtney was?
David Courtney was. Well, I think the first and foremost, before the talent and as a writer and all that, I think as a good man and a kind human being, and I think that is got to be paramount. Good father and all of that. I think that's got to come first, and then followed by that I have touched people's lives with with music that I've written. Um, and played a part in helping and passing it on and helping to develop with others. So yeah, I guess that would really be it for me. Yeah, that would be. I can't think of anything more
Excellent,
than that
David.
really.
Well, David, I want to thank you for sharing this time with me. It's a special reunion we've had. Um,
Very,
your book is now available on Amazon worldwide.
yeah,
And if you have your album, they can go to your website or they can go to your Instagram, which is David Courtney 1812,
yeah.
that they can find all the information. So I want to thank you for this time together. I wish you great success for the future and the family. And I hope
Thank
to see you in 2021
you. We will.
in London. And thank you for joining us today. And until next time, I'm Gary Quinn.